right, good evening everybody. Welcome to the fourth and final webinar in our Living a Life of Flow series, and tonight I'm joining you from a windy and stormy Cape Town. And this is also the first time that I'm sitting in the same city with a co-presenter and not in the same room. So I would like to really welcome and introduce you to Mike Budden. Mike, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, can hear you.
I can
indeed. I did lose you for
indeed.
a moment, but here I am.
Brilliant. Welcome, Mike. It's really great to have you on here tonight. So before we really get into tonight's session, which is all about how to find work at Flow at work, let's start off the way we normally do. So please drop us a line in your question section. Drop me a line saying hello and letting me know where you are calling in from tonight. It'll be great to see all of you and to figure out who is listening from what part of the world you are with us tonight. And then the second thing that we always do at the start is get you to reflect on your week. So we are going to launch this poll, and the poll is for you to have a look and think back over the week and let us know how was your week in terms of being in flow. So please go and click and sign on. Let us know what kind of week you have had. And the options are there in front of you. By now you should be used to them. So just keep on clicking and letting us know. So thanks for those who are dropping in all their in the question panel where you're coming from. So once again, welcome to all the people. I see we're getting people coming in from Cape Town, from Knysna, from Johannesburg. We've got some from Durban and Pretoria tonight. There's someone from Port Elizabeth. So welcome to all of you. I see some of the my coaching clients are coming in, some of the people I'm doing team with. Someone's coming in from Elgin. So hi and good evening to you. So Mike, tonight is all about one of your big passions. And I think, we're going to be speaking quite a bit tonight about this idea of really being aligned and sharing a purpose and a vision with the people that you're involved with and the person that you're working with. So maybe a good place for us to start is, I know you're really passionate about what you do. So maybe you could share with us what it is that that drives you to do the kind of work you do.
Yeah, thanks, Linden. So, I work with organizations, and I've come to realize in the recent past that one of the ways that we're going to really be great in the world and show up in the world is by helping people be more fulfilled in their work, to be able to work in great places, because they're going to take out with them into their home lives, into their society. And so my passion is about helping societies transform through helping organizations be more sustainable and places of well-being.
Yeah.
And so deeper behind that, I believe that we're going to do that with conscious leaders. So leaders who know themselves, leaders who know how to build great people and grow great people, and to grow great workplaces, so very conscious cultures that are going to allow people to flourish. So that's my passion.
Wow. So we've spent quite a bit of time over the last few months and the last year really chatting a lot. So for those of you who are listening, and Mike is one of my mastermind connections, and every 2 weeks Mike and I get on a Skype together, and for 2 hours we just talk, and we talk about the things that are important to us. We talk about flow, we talk about leadership, we talk about how to make the world the kind of place that we want it to be. And one of the things that comes across for both Mike and I, and that we both really share, is this idea of we can live in a world in which people are really connected. There's a real sense of community, a real sense of real connection, that you're not just moving through the world on your own and with your immediate family, but there's this opportunity to be part of a tribe, and that tribe includes your workspace and the people you work with and what kind of leadership's involved in that. So Mike, I'm really excited to be sharing this platform with you and amongst all the others we share, and thanks for that passion and for bringing it on. So I'm going to actually hand over to you to, so while I do this, I'm just going to be switching that you guys start seeing Mike's screen in front of you, because I know he's going to take us through some slides. So Mike, really over to you just to take us through this idea of flow in work. What is it? How do we get there? Why is it so important for us?
So I think this is a really interesting part of the whole concept of flow. And I've really started to understand and starting to want to really work with how do we get both flow as an individual but also flow in an organization. And so it's quite interesting to ask the question, how many of us really do love our jobs? And also the counter to that, how many of us really know that our jobs love us? And so I think we're in flow when we're able to both bring ourselves into work and into the workplace, but the workplace is also a place that recognizes and affirms what we bring into that place and values what we can bring into the space of work. And so I think linked to that is, we spend so much time at work. Most of our lives are probably in the workplace.
Yeah.
And yet why we separate out that can only be in flow out of the workplace? Why do we separate why we only experience love in the home or with our friends and not in the workplace? Why do we separate out that it's only our external pursuits that are the things that we really love and can love doing? And why can't we experience that in the workplace? And I think it's critical that if we are going to be in flow as individuals, it needs to be in flow holistically in our lives, both in the workplace and out of the workplace.
Gotcha. So Mike, I've got sorry to interrupt. I've got a question coming through here from, let me see who it's from Sharon. And Sharon asks us, she says, at the beginning of this conversation, we've talked a lot about fulfillment and this idea of being fulfilled. And she says here, and I agree, Sharon, great question. It's a term that's often used, but what does it actually mean? So, I certainly have my way of understanding when I'm fulfilled in my life. In terms of the context of this conversation, what do you think it means to be fulfilled when you're in work, in your work environment, or maybe even just broader than that?
So that's a really fascinating conversation to have, because I think fulfillment looks different for different people. And so I really think that depends where each one of our motivations come from. And perhaps later in the webinar we may get a chance to get there. But I really think for some people fulfillment is really just having a safe and secure job and sufficient income to provide for them and provide for their security needs. For others, fulfillment is having a place that I can connect and have relationships. And for others, fulfillment may be, well, I can be promoted every year and I can get great bonuses and my self-esteem needs are fulfilled. And yet then for others it might be, well, I'm being challenged. I've got challenging projects, challenging assignments that are given to me. And for me, I'm fulfilled when I know I can be making a difference and when I'm in a cohesive community. So that really is different for different people. And I think what Sharon's question is really good is when we start thinking about organizations and leadership is about understanding what fulfillment is for different people and then being able to help them realize that.
Great. So what I love about your answer is the awareness that for every one of us it will be different. And the underlying theme that's coming out in what you've said is that fulfillment is literally that, when the needs or the aspirations I as an individual have are being fulfilled, when those needs are being met. Now that'll be very different depending on who we're talking to. So myself, Sharon, we all might have different needs, and we will feel fulfilled when that need is being met. Is that correct? Is that how you kind of get the idea of the fulfillment?
That is how I get it, and I think what we're going to start talking about in this webinar is some organizations may facilitate fulfillment for me, but it's not going to facilitate that for Sharon because her needs may be different. And for me, when I'm looking for a workplace, I need to find a place that's going to allow me to express my highest need for fulfillment at that point in time. And that may change as well.
Brilliant. Thanks. And Sharon, thanks for that question. And to the rest of you, if you've just dropped in, I see quite a few people are dropping in now. Please, in the question panel, say hello to us and let us know where you're from. And if you have any questions throughout the night, please make sure you add them there and we will answer them as soon as we possibly can. Back to you, Mike.
Yeah, good. So I think what's really important is work. And what I've just pulled up on the slide now is we face these two things. I think at the end of our weekends tomorrow is Monday again. And a really interesting statistic is that most heart attacks occur on a Monday morning. And there's some
Wow.
sense of, well, that stress that people face as they embark on another week. And then on the other hand is why we always look so forward to Fridays. So I'd like to tell a little story quickly about a friend that I have and a very, very accomplished speaker and around conscious capitalism. But he comes from India, and when he arrived in the US, he asked his wife, why are those places called TGI Fridays, those restaurants? I thought Christians worship on a Sunday. So, but it's the notion of, hey, we live for the weekends, and surely that's not right. Surely we need to find places for work that we can enjoy. And so as an intro to this conversation, I've just pulled up another slide which is around employee engagement. And, for fully engaged employees, they're creative, they love working in that company, there's innovation, they help move the organization forward. For non-engaged employees, well, they probably emotionally have withdrawn from the organization, but they basically sleepwalk through their workday. They don't put a huge amount of energy. And if you're actively disengaged, you're probably acting out your unhappiness at work. But what that slide shows you from the Gallup survey is that, and this is in the United States, that only about 30% of employees are actively engaged. That means that about 70% of their workforce, and that's about 100 million people, go to home every day unfulfilled. And the next slide shows some similar information both from the UK and the US. And what's been interesting is there's an organization starting to study that in South Africa, and it's showing a very, very similar statistic. So there's a huge challenge for organizations to want to get their employees engaged. More engaged employees means a more productive environment.
So Mike,
it actually means that it has an impact on the bottom line.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
what means that, yeah.
Yeah, what comes up for me is that the underlying message of what you're saying here is that the majority of people around the world are not in flow at work. They're either not connected to the organization they're working for or the work they are doing, but in some way when they go to work, it is a part of themselves that they'd rather not be doing. And that for me becomes a really scary idea. So I understand it, I believe it, I know it's true, that's why you and I do the work we do.
Sorry, Linden, I haven't been able to hear that too well.
All right. I was just reflecting on that. What those stats are saying to us is that it means that the majority of people around the world do not actually want to go and do the work they're doing. They don't want to go to work. They're not. Yep, I can hear you, Mike. Can you hear me? Maybe this is a message from the technological gods suggesting I shouldn't interrupt you as much. So, Mike, back to you. Take us through the next one.
Sorry, I got you back. I lost you there a little bit.
Sure, not a problem. Don't worry about it. Keep going. We'll catch it up later.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, I think this is at the heart and the crux of the matter is at the end of the day, if we can each individually feel more fulfilled in our workplace and workplaces have people that are feeling more fulfilled and engaged, we're going to be more prosperous, successful, and well in a holistic sense. So I think this really brings us into how do we get into flow. And I think you've dealt with in the previous webinars quite a lot around how we can personally come into flow. But I want to use a little formula. I'm great in using frameworks for us to try and see and understand and hang off these types of conversations. And this is a formula that was given to us by a good, dear old friend, a mentor of ours in our organization. And it really says that there are three ingredients for us to get into flow. And it actually was started with how do organizations get into flow, but I'm going to start off with a personal flow space because I think it's when we get these three things, if we get each three of them strong, we're going to multiply our impact of feeling in flow. And so the first one is competence. So competence talks about how we're going to be in flow when we're doing things that we're good at, but not only what we're good at, what we're passionate about. So where we can marry both what we love doing and growing an expertise in that space, that's going to help us get into flow. But there's two important multipliers to that, I believe, because I don't think it's only about our capability and our skill and even that piece of work that we love doing, I believe we're in flow when we know what our values are and we can live in congruence with our values. We can live, we can truly bring our values into the world, and we don't feel our values get compromised in any way. And then the third piece is purpose. If we truly know our purpose and we are in the process of creating our purpose, if we can multiply those three things, then I believe we start getting into personal flow.
Great. So can you give us an example of what you mean there by values? So you and I have this conversation a lot, but maybe for all of us, just to get clear, when you say that our values, what we're doing is aligned with our values, what do you mean by that?
Okay. So value is for me it encapsulates our beliefs and more importantly then our behaviors. So if I say I value family and I truly do that, then is my behavior in line with that value? Am I able to spend the time with my family that I would like to, invest my time with them, have the conversations I'd like to have with them? Or does my life actually not demonstrate that at all? I really just squeeze them in where and if I can. Then, then I can't really even say that's a value. So the values are those things that I hold dear in my life, which I live out, how I do things, how I express myself, and yeah, basically how I behave is a reflection of what my values are.
Got it. Thank you.
Now, it's interesting that often for many of us we haven't sat down and thought about, so what are the top three things that we truly value? And if we value those things, why do we believe they're important? And then how do we behave in accordance with those values? And it's a very interesting exercise for anybody to go and sit down and do. It's just, what are the top three things? So, for me it would be trust, it would be family, it would be ethics. I have a few more than that. It would include forgiveness. So why do I believe those are important and how do I live them out?
Brilliant. So can I come in here and check that I'm getting this clear? So for me, my values are definitely about community. There's a connection with people is very important to me. So if I'm saying that that is my value, the next question is my behavior reflecting that value? So am I behaving in a way that's creating connection between people? That would be in aligned with it. But if I'm behaving in a way that's actually pushing people away, making people feel not supported, not held, not safe, then even though I might say my value on the one hand is this idea of this connection and community, on the other hand my behavior is not in line with that. Is that what we're talking about here, that alignment?
So I think that's, starts getting into the alignment aspect of it, and we'll get to that in a moment where I think we can explain more about where we're in or out of alignment with our value system, but maybe take out any environmental considerations out of that. I think we would be in maximum optimal flow when we are living out what we're best at in the world, showing up how we are the best for the world in terms of our behavior and our purpose.
Okay.
Right. Good. So I'm going to build on this now because that's, to me, talks about personal flow. But we're talking about now, how do we bring that into the workplace? And so I want to go to a piece now where we really work with organizations to say, how do you get an organizational flow? Because organizations are really just, they're not things, they're made up of people. And so the more we can get people to flow and flow together, the more our organizations are going to be able to flow. So organizational flow for me starts with, well, what are organizations here for in the first place? Organizations and companies, and it doesn't matter how big or small, are all there to create value. And my belief is they're there to create value for all our stakeholders. So it is about creating value for our customers, the product or the service we're offering them. is to create value for our employees, the people at work, and for us individually who work there. We want to have value in the place that we work, both in terms of fulfillment and reward. We want to create value for our suppliers, the people that we relate with, that provide us with good inputs to be able to deliver on that. We want to create value for our shareholders. And I think that's one of the big shifts I'm starting to see in the world, is that it's not the shareholder who's first and foremost to get value. But for me, about organizational flow is when we get sustainable value creation for all the stakeholders, because we are systemic. An organization is not an island. They don't exist for themselves. They operate and work in a community, and they've got many role players. So for me, that's the first starting point, is why do organizations exist? What's their purpose? So in that sense, how does an organization build or foster sustainable value creation? And you'll see the correlation here with the formula of personal flow. The first one is that it needs the right capabilities. It needs people who have got the skills, the qualifications, the knowledge, the attributes we need to do the various jobs that we've got in that organization. And I think importantly with that too, is that is best expressed when we've got people who are doing work where they're in flow. So that's the one part of the equation. But it's quite interesting, as we work with organizations, that's often the only piece that they look at when they look at value creation. Many of them hire just for skill. They hire for capability. That's the thing they measure. And yet we know that when great teams work together, it's more than just throwing the cleverest and the brightest people together. And so to me, there's two other parts to this equation. And if we can take the great capability that we may have in an organization and multiply that first with what I call affinity, which is that sense of belonging to an organization, sharing in its ethos. And so, well, your question you were asking me a moment ago was those values. If it is a place where I can bring my values to work, then I'm going to have greater affinity. I'm going to sense I belong with these people. We behave in a way, we do things in a way that's similar. And so affinity talks about how we do things around here.
So Mike, can I interrupt you there for a second? So sure. I just want to go back to I almost want to switch it. So if I'm Linden and I want to go work in an organization, and I want to know, is this a place where I will find flow for myself? Is this a place where I will be productive, happy, focused, all those things we've talked about in the last 3 webinars? How is this a place I'm going? What I'm hearing from you is that there are, so far, 2 of the 3 things you've talked about. The first one is what I'm going to be doing in that organization, the actual job I'm going to be doing. I need to have the skills, the qualifications, the experience, the knowledge, the attributes, and to be playing the roles that get me into flow. So if I'm someone who loves being around people, is the role I'm going to be playing all about people? So the first one is definitely that, and it makes me think of, and I forget who did it, but you probably know, because it's quite a well-known idea, that to be in flow in terms of what you're doing, you need to be kind of in that space where your ability is stretched a little bit. So your competence versus the challenge there's a bit of a stretch. So it's not something that you can do with your eyes closed, and yet it's something that's not so difficult that you'll never actually feel a sense of comfort, and you'll be very stressed the whole time. So there's that gap of operating in the space of what I'm going to be doing. I've got the skills, the qualifications, and experience. They're stretching me a little bit, but not too much that it's stressful. So that would be the capability bit.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then the affinity bit.
I mean, I think also, linked to that is, part of it is that organization recognizes that capability I have and is able to effectively match that capability to an appropriate role within their space that supports them to achieve their objectives.
Gotcha. So if I rock up to work and I'm doing something where I've got all this capacity, I've got all this ability, but it's not being utilized, I'm very quickly going to get out of flow and not want to go to work either.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then on the affinity side, once again, something you said to me, I think it was a few months ago, you used a particular phrase that I really loved, and it was this idea of, can I show up for work in all that I am and feel safe about that? So can I bring everything I am, my beliefs, how I act, what I need, and go into that workspace feeling absolutely safe that I can bring everything of who I am into that space and know that it will be fine and safe and supported. Is that the affinity piece, that ability to bring everything you are into that space and know that it's okay?
Yes, sir. Linden?
Yeah, I can hear you. Keep going.
Yeah. Sorry, I lost you a little bit there, but I think I got a sense of it, is that showing up and feeling safe in that workspace and being able to express all who I am there. So can I bring my values into work? And I think that's a critical part of affinity. And do I connect with these people here?
So that's a great question for everyone listening in tonight, to really ask yourself about your work environment. Can you bring who you are in its entirety into your workspace and know that that entire who you are and your values that are a fundamental part of you, that when you bring them into the workspace, they will be accepted, they will be celebrated, they will be supported. Because what we're really saying tonight is that for you to get into that space of flow in your workspace, you need to be doing that. And here's another little tweak to that, is if you are working with a whole bunch of other people, have a look and see, do I do this for others? Do I behave in a way, do I lead if you're a leader of a team? Do I lead, am I conscious that I'm going and creating an environment in the workspace where people feel that everything of who they are can be brought there?
Yeah. And I'll give you an example, Lyndon, on that is, I'm going to give an extreme example. So if you were in an organization that I would refer to as toxic. So toxic would be values that are normally completely limiting, and so where one would experience values of abuse and controlling and being stifled. It is a place that's pretty unsustainable, but the language that I hear people have when they're in those places is, this is causing me to be a person who I am not. So I'm feeling that I have to act completely out of character. And so in those extreme situations, normally honest people would actually start behaving dishonestly just to keep safe. But it clearly is not resonating with their value system.
Got it. You know, that also reminds me, Mike, because we've spoken quite a bit about it, and for all of those who were on this webinar 2 weeks ago, we mentioned it there, this idea of positive intelligence, that there's a part of your brain that is able to be all the things we want to be: creative, focused, energized, empathetic. And that to get into that part of our brain, we actually need two things. So when you are feeling safe and when you are feeling valued, and I think the valued part will still come up in Mike's next point, but when you have those two things, safety and value, that you're worthy, that what you're doing is adding value, when you have those two, it allows the chemicals in your brain to switch from your stress chemical into your dopamine, which is then going to inspire you and create clearer thinking, greater strategic thinking, more focus. So actually this idea of being in affinity with the values of the people around you is a fundamental requirement to getting yourself in your brain and your neurological functioning, to getting to yourself in a space where you can be your most productive, focused, energized, capable. So it's not just a nice to have, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I liked the people and felt safe in my environment, but actually from a productivity point of view, you will not get into the part of your brain that allows you to get into flow unless you have safety.
Absolutely. So I think, you know, and I love the way you put it around the positive expression of that, and I just want to use the antithesis of that. If we look at the negative, if I'm under pressure or in a stressful situation, then every one of us will emotionally regress. And when we emotionally regress, it actually impacts the way our neurons fire in our brains. So it actually impacts our IQ and our ability to think straight and think rationally and be productive. So these have interplays with each other, and both for the individual and the organization's sake. So if you are in a space that's causing you a lot of stress, anxiety, and or your values are being compromised, then the consequence is going to be you're very unlikely going to be in flow. In fact, I don't think it's possible to be in flow. So yes, it's about finding that place where I can bring my whole self to work.
Brilliant. So Mike, I've got a question here. Someone has asked, can your values change over time? What do you think about that?
Sorry, I just missed that question.
So the question was, can your values change over time?
Yes, I do believe they can. I think we evolve over time and we grow in consciousness, and as a result we may shift our values. I also think that we may think we have a set of values, but when we clearly go and examine our behaviors, they're not in line with that, and that may inform that we rethink what those values are. So I absolutely think that they can change over time.
Great, thanks, and thanks for that question. If there are other questions, please drop them into your question box, and we will certainly answer them as they come on through. All right, Mike, so what is under the purpose block? I am curious.
So the last part of the equation from an organization perspective is alignment. And to me that talks about every single person in the organization. One knows what the organization's purpose is, and they understand how they contribute towards fulfilling that purpose. So essentially organizations are there about building customer value and success, and so they know how their role fits in to be able to contribute to that. And to me that's about alignment. And so again, if I know what my purpose is, the best chance for me to be in flow in my workspace is to know that my purpose is aligned with the organization's purpose, that I can come and fulfill my purpose in that place. Now, purpose is quite an interesting thing because often our purposes can be expressed in very many different types of work. I mean, I want to make a difference in the world and demonstrate love in this world and help people feel greater fulfillment. Well, boy, I can go and do that in many, many different places and ways. So, but does the organization that I'm in provide me with maximum opportunity to do that? So that's the one part of the individual coming in. The other part is, how do we get an organizational inflow? Organization gets in flow when we've got alignment of people around the purpose and the people that work in here. So yeah, and to me those things multiply each other. But I'll talk about that in a second. I don't know if you've got any comments or questions on the alignment piece.
Yeah, no, I think the multiplying bit is really important for me, so let's get straight into that.
Yeah, okay. So this comes to the point of where we see some organizations really somehow getting it right. They're great organizations to be in. They're great to work with, work in, and they are being successful in a number of fronts. And those organizations, we believe, are the ones that get these three pieces really, really working. So I want to use the analogy of a sports team. We've all seen great sports teams where they've hired all the brilliant players, the ones that on paper should be scoring all the goals or the tries or whatever sport it is. So capability-wise, they are brilliant. And yet, somehow, when they get on the field, they don't do that. And then you get other teams that have got good players, they've got capability, but they may not be the brilliant ones, and yet they just know how to get, they've got that winning formula, we call it. And that's because you look at them, they see they've got the affinity and the alignment piece right. They know where they fit on the field, they know when to pass the ball, they don't stand on each other's toes, they don't want to go and score all the tries themselves, so they really start gelling, and to me that's affinity and alignment. And it is no different in the workplace. And I think we've all as individuals have probably experienced some space of that. That is when we're in flow in a team, is when we've got that clear purpose, we behave in a way that supports and builds each other up, and we multiply that with the capability we have. And my sense is that organizations that get affinity and alignment right are the ones that truly have competitive advantage. And that's why they're creating greater value at the end of the day.
Alrighty, so let me just summarize yeah?
Maybe on,
Can
yes,
I just...
I want to just comment on that.
Yeah, so I just want to summarize here. So once again, I want to switch it. I get that's what organizations need to do, but for myself and probably a whole bunch of people who are listening and trying to figure out what do I need to do to go into a workspace where I'm feeling in flow. What we're really saying here is that there are 3 requirements for any of us to be in flow in work. The one is that we are doing things, our roles, our tasks, we have the capacity, the capability to do it, and it might be stretching us a little bit so that it's using our skills, our qualifications, our experience, our knowledge, and we're doing the things we love. But that's not enough. What we also need is to be the organization needs to be one where the people we're working with, the culture, the environment that we go into every day is such that it makes us feel welcome, that someone's got our back, that the organization cares for us and we can be fully who we are in that space. So that's the affinity bit. And then lastly, the alignment bit is that the purpose of the organization, what it's about, matches what's really important to me in my life. So for me, making connection with human beings, building environment and teams where people feel that there's a real sense of belonging, that's one of my core purposes. If I was going into a team or a work environment that did not do that, then I would miss out on the alignment bit. So if I'm getting us right here, all 3 of them are required. It's not that you can only have one. So you might, Mike, I see that you have got multiplication signs between the 3. What does that mean? Why have you used that instead of plus signs or any other scientific notification there?
Yeah, so there's a very, very good reason for that, and that was the piece I was just going to speak to now, is that if one of those is 0, the chances of you having sustainable value creation is going to be 0. It does not mean maybe an organization can get away with short-term success, and it doesn't mean that as an individual we may not have some peak experiences if 1 or 2 of those aren't missing. But if we want to be constantly, continuously in flow and sustainably creating value, both as an individual and as an organization, it's important that all 3 are there, because they do multiply each other and they leverage each other. If it's lower, it's going to take away. It doesn't matter how good we are and how high our capability is, we're not going to be able to achieve that space of continuous flow.
Wow, so that's quite a concept. So I might have the skills, qualification, experience, and love to do the job I'm doing. I might be really aligned with the organization's purpose, what they're passionate about, I'm passionate about, and yet if I don't have a sense of bonding, if I don't have a sense of community, that sense of affinity with the people, the chances are that it won't work. And the same if any one of those 3 are missing, no matter how much the other 2 are very high scoring and positive, the chances are I won't be long-term, sustainable, productive, in flow, happy, effective, or adding any sustainable value to myself or the organization. So all 3 have to be present at some degree for any sense of flow to be happening.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So maybe a good example would be a person who says, wow, that company is busy doing something really innovative. I love that project. I've got the skill. I'm going to go and work for them, and I'm going because I love this thing they're creating. But if they will have a peak experience, as I would call it, during their time of creation, but either when that comes to an end, where they're going to go to then, and or over time, they're going to feel that I might love this and I like what they're doing, but I don't fit here. I don't feel like I'm part of it. And they will at some point in time feel, well, I need to move on. Yeah.
Got it. So what I want to do here is I just want to quickly say, so thanks guys to all the people who are dropping in comments through the questions. We're getting a lot of comments coming in. I really appreciate that. I want to check and invite you in the comments, in the questions section, to drop in where you think you are in terms of your work, your flow at work. Are there one of these that you think is maybe not as strong as the others? Have in your workspace, are all 3 perfectly aligned and scoring high so that your overall work experience is one of positivity and flow? just let us know so that we can also get a sense of where you're at as you're listening to this and what's coming up for you. So that would be great. Mike, back to you. Let's see where it goes from here.
Okay, good. So the last piece is maybe an intro to a future series that we would want to do, but
you're giving away our secrets,
really just,
Mike.
Sorry?
You're giving away our secrets about the next webinar series that will be happening out of the Linden Booth Flow Coach space.
Can I go on, Linden?
Yeah, please do. Keep going, Mike. Please do.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please keep going.
Okay. Good. All right. Good. So the last piece is to do with how does this environment get created? How do we create an environment where people feel they bring their capabilities, they have affinity, and they have alignment? And this came through from some work that we were introduced by a person named Jim Ware, who actually studied investment managers, which is quite a cutthroat industry in some ways, and has and no offense to anybody that's listening, but prima donnas working for them, but quite a lot of individualistic, competitive, wanting to be the best. But it was a very interesting insight that they got from those asset managers that were really brilliant at managing to create value. And you will see the resonance with the formulas above. So the key ingredient to creating a space like this is where people have trust, and particularly trust in their leadership. And these are the conditions. This is how flow is created. And I believe flow and trust go very closely hand in hand, because when we have high flow, there's also high trust, and vice versa. It needs high trust for high flow. So the first piece that he discovered when he looked at leadership trust was that people had trust in their leaders' competence and in each other's competence. So if I'm on a team, I'm going to only really trust that team if we trust each other's capability that we bring to the party to be able to achieve what we need to do. And people will trust their leaders when they know that they're, one, technically proficient in their field of expertise and are competent as leaders. The second piece was interesting, was that they trusted the leadership because they were caring. And that caring isn't necessarily a nice or warm, soft, fuzzy, we all hug each other every day when you come into the office and this beautiful, loving place. I mean, it's nice to maybe have that, but that isn't the caring that is talked about here. The caring that is expressed here is, I care for you as a human being. I care for you as a person that is needing to do a role, wants to be fulfilled. How do I help you find fulfillment? How do I understand what your passion is, and how I can release your potential in that? How do I help you have the tools to be able to do what you need to do, and that you're empowered to do that? And to me, that caring is the piece that touches on to the heart of affinity, touches to the heart of what your values are, and how do you bring that into the workplace. And the last piece is what I call congruence. And congruence, and it's interesting, I often ask people what do they think congruence means, and some find it quite hard to answer. But congruence for me means I'm the same inside as I am on the outside. So who people see I am, or what I say I am, is how they experience me. And to me that talks about alignment. It's a personal alignment. There's an alignment between my behavior, who I say I am, and what I'm trying to achieve. And I send out a congruent message into the organization. And I believe that's only when that happens is the place that we can get maximum alignment in organizations. So those are the three pieces that I believe are important for leadership trust, which is, when we're in places of high trust, is the place that we experience greatest affinity and alignment.
So Mike, what really comes up for me here is that when I'm trying to figure out whether I'm in flow in my work or what I need to do to be in flow, firstly, if you are being led, so if you're not the leader but you are being led, do your leaders provide you with these three ingredients? Are they firstly competent in what they do, but have they also created a team that's competent? The second one for me is really interesting. So what we're saying here is that leaders who demonstrate that they are really caring, and I understand your definition of caring. It's not the what was the word you used? I thought it was great, that happy, huggy, smiley stuff. Though in my office, that's certainly the way we do it. But how, if you have that real caring about somebody else. So there's a definition I love using, which is the definition of compassion. So I love the idea of a caring, compassionate leader. And that means when I use that term, it's compassion is that you are able to get where someone is at and stand for their greatness, stand for the possibility of what they could become. So when you can marry those two, then you really have caring leadership. So I think for all of those listening, a really good question is to have a look at the leadership you are working under, and if you are a leader, to evaluate yourselves against these three components, to say to what degree does my leadership provide these three things for the people who I work with? Do I enable them to get into flow at work, or am I part of what might be a block to flow for them?
So yeah, I think that's a really good question, Linden. And there's sorry, just around the caring piece. So there's caring for the individual, and there's also caring for the organization. And so part of that may be, there may be people in our teams that don't have affinity and or alignment. And that's not a judgment on them that they're not good enough or they don't fit in. But they, in this context, they don't have affinity and alignment. I believe we all have a place that we can fit and we can find affinity and alignment with. But when there is somebody that is not got affinity or alignment, I care, one, for the individual to explore that with them and help them if they would want to grow affinity and alignment with that. But similarly, if they're out of alignment or they don't have affinity, they could be adding quite a lot of stress into their team and or their system. And if I as a leader don't spot that and deal with it, I'm not being caring for the people that do have affinity and alignment.
Great, I love that. Thanks, Mike. So I'm just noting that thank you everyone for all the comments that are coming through. My comment boxes are running almost quicker than I can keep up with it. So thank you everyone for the comments that you're dropping through. If any of you have any very specific questions, I will try and catch them before they move up as the next comment comes in, but please let us know and we will definitely answer those for you. Mike, back to you.
Okay, good. So I want to perhaps summarize what I've been saying with just introducing another framework in a short time. I'll just touch on it briefly, but I think it'll start pulling this together and making sense. So this is a framework from some work done by Ken Wilber, and it's really about when do we get capacity for group action. So we've spoken a lot around values, and so what this framework shows us is, firstly, each of us as an individual have our own character, which is our values base, and whatever our character is, our beliefs and our values are expressed in the external through our behavior. And then we all, when we're at work, we come into work in the workplace, we form a group, a collective, and it's the sum of the individual values that often form the norm for the group values, what our group culture is. And also from that then says, well, if that's what our group values, then this is how we behave as a group. So those are four elements. There's the individual character and how it externalizes itself in behavior, and then there's the organizational, the collective group and values. And where this really comes together is these are four conditions to get both personal and organizational flow. Is when we get alignment with values, alignment with our mission, and when we get alignment between our personal values and our behaviors, and alignment between our group values and our behaviors. And so let me just jump to the next slide, because I think that will start talking to it. So when we experience flow as individuals, as people who go into the workplace, is when we've got that values alignment between myself and the collective, when I can bring my values to work. And also when I've got that mission alignment. So my core motivation in life, my purpose, is one that is aligned with what the group wants to achieve, its purpose. And in line with that, it says we're going to behave in a certain way to achieve those objectives. So that's when we experience flow, and we've spoken quite a lot about that.
So,
and then what are the conditions for flow?
Can I stop you there for a sec? So what really comes up for me is, and I know in your work, because we speak about both our works as in our mastermind groups, the idea that really fascinates me is the alignment of our internal values with our behaviors, and how often it is the values that we might not be conscious of within ourselves that express themselves through our behavior. So what I mean by that is I might have this value that says, listen, I'm going to respect everyone. Okay, and then most of the time I am behaving in that way, and then sometimes something happens, something will trigger me, someone will behave in a way, and without thinking about it, I just behave in a way that is rude, that is not respectful. So the logic there is that somewhere inside of me, somewhere in this whole brain, my subconscious, there is a need that was maybe a need for safety, maybe a need for more affirmation, maybe a need for, all the subconscious needs that we really get, that then bypasses my conscious, rational thinking values and stakes its claim and say, Linden, you're feeling unsafe here for whatever reason, go and be rude because that'll create safety for you. So, in this work of creating teams in which we really have a sense of safety, it is really important that the people in the team are able to understand both the values that they are conscious of and that they express and that they share, but there's often a lot of values, things that we need that are much deeper inside of us, that when later we look back and we think, why did I behave that way? That wasn't respectful. It was because there was something else inside you that needed to also be fulfilled. So the more the team is able to do the work, the more individuals within your team, within your workspace are able to do the work on themselves, to be really uncovering to what degree their behaviors and their values are aligning, the more it actually enables the team as a whole to get into flow.
Yeah. So I think you touched on a really fascinating whole. We could spend a whole night just on this. But I think there's two parts to it. So one is, yes, knowing myself and who I am and how I show up and what triggers me. And yes, you're right. It's when our fears kick in that what I call limiting values would show up. So the need for control or blame. So if I feel I'm going to be excommunicated and I really have a strong value of belonging, but I made a mistake, I may find somebody else to blame so I can just feel safe.
Yeah.
So those things, they come play out. So what's really important is for us to become quite conscious about what our values are and how we intend to live. But one of the best ways for us to grow in consciousness around that is to actually get day-to-day feedback from the people around us. So really high-trusting teams are ones that are able to give people feedback. So when I can be vulnerable and authentic with my team members, and they can say, hey, Mike, gee, you slipped up in that meeting. What happened there? What played out for you? They're a mirror, an effective mirror for me in that space. And, I think if organizations can start doing that more, better people we're going to all become as a result of that. Because unfortunately, we don't go and learn those things on a course. We learn that through day-to-day, bumping our heads experience, and when I got triggered and when I didn't. And at the time, we can't even see it. We need others to sometimes help us see it.
Great. So, Mike, I'm conscious of our time. With about 5 minutes to go, if you had to summarize the real key things that you would like us all to walk away with from tonight in the context of what do we need to create a work environment, a workspace, a work choice for ourselves that will enable us to get into personal flow, what would those things be that we should be looking out for and prioritizing in the space we are choosing to work?
Okay, good. So just as part of that wrap-up, I'm going to show this one last slide.
Great.
Because I think it talks to the exact thing we need to do now, is what leaders must do to facilitate flow. And to me, the piece you've just spoken about is that personal alignment piece. If I say I believe and value this, this is how you experience me. If they're not in alignment, then we are not creating that space for people to come out and live their values. And then the bottom piece is the structural alignment. So if we say as a group, as a collective, we value this, are the processes and the things that we do in our organization aligned with that? So I'll give a great example. I hear many companies tell me, we've got a core value of teamwork, and when we get in and we have a look at how they reward people and they do performance management, it's all based on the individual. So we're sending a mixed message. So I think part of what, in summary, for me is, and these are difficult things to always sense immediately, so I think that's a really important thing when we are thinking about where we're going to work, is we need to spend good time researching, thinking, working with as much as possible, meeting the team to try and understand and see that. So I saw a great quote the other day that says, we spend 4 or 5 years studying and thinking about what we're going to do, and then we base our work decision on a 1-hour interview. And sometimes that seems crazy. I've seen other examples of organizations that say, come work with us for 3 months and then make up your mind, which is quite a bold thing to do. But to me, it's really getting in and understanding, getting a sense of what's this organization's value system and to the extent to which they're really living that out. And can I bring my values into that space is really important for me. And then what's this organization's purpose? And for me, I would be wanting to know what this organization's higher purpose is beyond just making money. I want to know what their contribution to the world is, and can I bring myself to contribute to that as well? So those are important things for me I would look at, and if I'm in a space that I'm not resonating with, I would make a serious call about, is this the place for me? And be bold and courageous and consider taking myself somewhere else where I'm going to be more in flow.
Brilliant, Mike. Thank you. So for all of you out there listening, those 3 requirements to get yourself into flow and work: firstly, be doing things that you're qualified, that you love doing, that you enjoy, that you have the experience, and that stretches you in that section a little bit. Secondly, make sure who you are resonates with the team you're with, that you feel you are able to be yourself and bring yourself to work, and that will be a space where that can really be shared. And then thirdly, what is it that you really want to achieve in life? What's the mission you're on? What is your purpose? And is that aligned? Is that an opportunity that can really happen in the space that you're at? When those 3 are all present, you're very likely to get into flow. If one of them is missing, it might not be there. So this has been the last of our 4 webinars on getting yourself into flow. So for all of you, thank you very much for joining me over the last 4 weeks. I've had an absolute ball. Thanks to all the guests that have been with us over the last 3 weeks, to Brett, to Pam, to Mike. Thanks very much for coming through tonight. It's been really great. For all of you, my wish for you is that you go and have a life full of flow in every aspect, in your relationships, in yourself, and at work. And may the flow revolution grab you firmly and make sure that it's taking you along with it. Remember that my favorite quote from a week ago: you will need to sit by the side of a river for a very long time before roast duck will fly into your mouth. So the idea being, there's a whole bunch of information over the last 4 weeks that we have given you, but information is useless unless you get up off your arse and do something with it. So that's it for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us, and we really sincerely hope you have a fantastic life of flow.